There are rumblings that city court in Chattanooga might be on its way out. Well, if Chattanooga and other cities eliminate city courts, and if counties eliminate some of the duties of their sessions courts, you're going to have a problem. There will not be an easy means by which state government can maintain a machine that impoverishes, troubles, and harasses the poor and criminalizes activities which are under the statute, not criminal acts at all. And so I'll have to say, since I'm a very pro-government person, that no, we don't want to have that court eliminated. The story that I'm referring to is a couple weeks old now, and I at the time, back in the middle of June 19, I did mention it to you. But here now, since you missed that bit of news, let me just suggest that Jerry Mitchell, among other council members, would vote to eliminate that court. It came up in budget talks, and I think the final vote on the budget is tonight, and I haven't had a chance to look at the city budget to see where that court has its place in the spending. It's a $2.5 million budget for that court. It has I'm not sure how many judges it has. Judge Bean is one jurist there who's had two of my children before the bar, and maybe three. All of them have had their occasions to enter that justice of the peace casual, non-judicial venue. And the story says that city court has been suffering, you might say, a loss of duty, starting with the loss of criminal cases that in the past ranged as high as murder on down. Parking cases are removed. CARTA took over parking and set up its own payment and appeals system. And so the court has still traffic and environmental cases, though the story says the new administrative law judge is starting to take some of the latter cases. If you don't have a city court in your city, you're not going to have and here's the matter of concern, right? You're not going to have a means of allowing commercial government to continue to operate as easily and as readily and as cheaply as it does. So the question for you, my listener, is, do we eliminate city court and eliminate a very important mechanism by which the state, the modern commercial state, operates through its statutes and through really its abusive customs, ostensibly based on the statute? We're going to eliminate the venue where that operation can take place and keep poor people, keep African Americans, keep immigrants in line, and of course give a good scare to other people like you and your children, your teenage children, your 22-year-old college student daughter, perhaps. Keep them all in line too, to kind of maintain a pretense. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949, and my name is David Toulis, the smartest guy with a bow tie. And you know, when I look at myself in a mirror, I can straighten my bow tie up, but here I am when I look at myself in my camera. I've got a couple of cameras going, one for YouTube at Nougat Radio and the other on Facebook. My tie just looks really crooked, and then when I try to adjust it, it's double backwards, and I'm not sure what I'm looking at. And there the bow tie is not quite even. Though with your help at 800-8949, I will become even in all ways. In all ways, here on the David Toulis Show, I will be even and not tilting too much left or right. I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local, and we are a local-centric program. We think that what happens here is the most important series of events and efforts and human interactions that in the world that matter, right? We are, in a way, the center of the universe. And of course, we know that we are, because we have Sean Hannity at 3:00. So we are, as far as the news goes, the center of existence. And his analysis is breathing down the necks of some of the bad guys in the Democrat Party. Of course, there are plenty of bad guys in the Republican Party as well. And Sean gives them a run for their money too. Now, remember the uproar in Ferguson, 2014. Well, it was found that much of the anger among people in these little municipal corporations in the St. Louis area comes from traffic court, and traffic court has been used to when you have harass. It allows for police harassment under the transportation statute of that state, just as we have it here in Tennessee. We have an extra statutory enforcement mechanism by all the police departments, even though some of them, not all, some in the Chattanooga area have received notice about the problem. Okay, and that notice is from me, your host here, David Twillis, and that's what I do. My reporting is often just what does the law say, and I think that's a valuable service to you, my listener. What does the law actually say? We hear, for example, about Diana Watt in her noisy, in some really somewhat shocking and extraordinary, though highly routine arrest. Right? We hear about the 8 charges against her. And the man or the woman who matters, of course, who reads Nuganomics.com and subscribes to said blog, which is my platform, knows the problem in the statute and knows the careless abandon with which officers think they can stick people, right? They can stick them. And these cases, that one will end up in criminal court, but many cases that are purely traffic related under Title 55, they end up in city court, or if it's in the county, in Sessions Court. But you have an unpaid $75 ticket for driving, let's say, on an expired tag, or you got cited for a light bulb on your tax receipt out. That's to say, your tag is a tax receipt, and you're cited to court, and the system in some cities aggressively wants to fine you. I know in East Ridge, Judge Chris Helton's court, he'll let you off with a $30 fine on a so-called transportation offense, but he'll stick it to you through the administration for the $98.50 fee. And sometimes those are stacked. You get multiple fees per charge, depending, everyone has its own, the clerk has to devote special mental energy to dealing with each particular charge. And so that the expenditure of that cranial horsepower, if you will, deserves a $98 tap on your purse. So sometimes you get multiple fees. Sometimes, though, there's no fee at all. And so I wouldn't say it's arbitrary. I would say there's a reason that the judge gives one person a fee and then another person 2 fees, and yet a third, none. It's really up to him. And is it arbitrary and capricious? Maybe, but I'm sure there's a reason at the time when he makes that decision. It's all of course, very cursory and all second nature. With a judge like Chris Helton, it's all second nature. Well, this is David Twillis, 800-8949, 800-8949. Now, so here's this. You've not heard this before, so let me just explain to you why traffic court's important for the maintenance of the status quo. And if you want to maintain the status quo, especially when it comes to keeping poor people, African Americans, and immigrants in their places, right? If you're a conservative, this is something you may want to do, right? And so you have this system. Here's why traffic courts work, okay, and why they're there. And they're called corporation courts. Sessions is a corporation court for the county, and city court is the corporation court for the city. They're courts of limited jurisdiction. They're not constitutional courts in the sense that no one worries about constitutional rights in them. Right? The judge doesn't care. There's no prosecutor. The witness is a prosecutor, and the judge is sometimes is the prosecutor as well. Depending, because it's all offhand. It's in the nature of, it's kind of frontier justice, right? It comes from the old frontier justice days. The circuit rider, we have a circuit judge because the judge was on a circuit on his horse, and with his saddlebags attached to the rump, would come into town, and on a certain day he would hold court. And he did a circuit of several towns and counties because he had some law knowledge. He'd read a law book or two. And though he didn't have any kind of bar license, he was the judge. And that was in the 1900s, 1800s. That's what happened, even, of course, back before that. But these all right, just get to it, David. Come on, get to it. Get to the point. That's the main point. Let me just kind of get through the hay and put the hay aside and say, okay, here's why these courts exist. They exist so that the Constitution can be bypassed, so that the state itself can bypass the Constitution and bypass your rights. Your rights are bypassed by the very existence of city court, because it allows the state to prosecute these cases casually in mass numbers. And that's what in the Ferguson story back in 2014, that's why you had an explosion, because people were repeatedly dragged before these courts. And many of them, of course, have been killed. They've been executed by the police because they in a bad taillight case, the poor man reached for something or got out of his car too aggressively and pulled out his wallet, and of course get shot. And we have hundreds of cases like that across the country over the years. And last year it was 1,200 people killed by so-called law enforcement. Many law enforcement departments are simply gangs, or simply government-run gangs. And so in some, I'm sure in some states, the police departments of these cities match or meet most, if not all, of the qualifications for a terrorist organization. And I say that not lightly, because in Tennessee there are three main ways of identifying a terrorist act, and police departments meet only two of them. So we're okay here in Tennessee, and so city courts exist so that the state does not have to worry about constitutional rights. Everything is handled casually and quickly. And the pain of a fine in city court, which is a maximum of $50, the pain is low enough that people accept the charge. They don't challenge jurisdiction. They accept the charge. They assume the charge is valid, and they're going to try to dispose of it as quickly as they can. So the human interest of the victim of the enforcement state, that person says, I might as well just go here. Why make a big deal out of it? Why hire a lawyer? Why prolong it? Why waive the court, which is one of your rights you can do, waive the court and have your case heard by the grand jury? If you do that, you might get indicted. Oh man, if I get indicted, think about that. Then the officer knocks at my door to arrest me, right? That's what happens, unless I post a bond. And then, if I post a bond, it may be a $500 bond, and I have to pay 10%. That means I pay $50 fee, and I won't get that back. Or I have to put the whole amount up myself, and then I'm out $500 until the whole thing is over. Then I get the money back from the county or the city. And so why do that? Why? That's just so much trouble. This is David Toulis, 800-8949, 800-8949. And a guy like me, this is the kind of calculation I would make. I'd say, okay, look, just pay it. Just see what you can do to get out from underneath it. And it's not really a law question at this point. It's not really a jurisdictional question at this point. It's just, what can I do to make this problem go away? And the state is counting on that. The state is counting on the problem being not so painful as to require that you fight, right? It's so soft a touch on your time and your person that you calculate pragmatically, rather than making a good legal decision. You deal with it pragmatically on time consideration, trouble consideration, headache consideration. I don't want that, so I'll just handle it in city court. Well, the state is counting on that decision being made, and that's why in Tennessee the false claims upon your rights, say to travel, are so light financially that, and if you read Nuganomics.com, you may have read this essay. It's like 80 cents a day or something like that. You have a driver's license for renewal, $25 a year or so, and figure out how many, 15 cents a day. It's a small amount of money. You give up your right to do something by obtaining a privilege. The privilege, of course, is something that is forbidden to do. By definition, a privilege is anything that's illegal or unlawful or forbidden to do without the tax or fee or permission being obtained through the application process to become a privileged person, right? Privileges are by definition, you could say they're racist, okay? By definition, they are against the poor and favoring the rich. Because for you, a permission that you have to pay for doesn't matter. But for a poor person, it hurts a lot. And then you have the renewal process, and you have other things attached to it. And then you have, through that permission, you have other commercial claims that you allow to be made against you. That would be financial responsibility law. That would be insurance, registration of your car, of course, taxes paid on car sales. All those are in the commercial jurisdiction, because you're not dealing here in your rights anymore. You're dealing in the area of privileges, right? Privilege is the thing that the state gives you that you think you have to do that particular thing. And so what we want to have you to recognize is that, generally speaking, you want to exercise rights and not obtain privileges, especially since privileges have to be applied for. And you have to have a privilege tax receipt only if you're involved in commercial activity. That's where the state has its authority. It's in the commercial realm. In the corporate realm, you could say. This is David Toulis, and the number is 800-8949, 800-8949, and brought to you by Nuganomics.com and yournews.com as well. Love your neighbor and buy local. That's my slogan. So have I said it? Have I said the answer to my question in the best way? Maybe there are too many words here. Let's just simplify it again. City court exists as a pressure relief valve for the police state. Okay, if you don't have the city court, you can't have a mass number of people, mostly poor, mostly minority, mostly immigrant. You can't handle that number of people if everybody's rights have to be respected. If everybody has to be indicted right before being tried. If there's a criminal accusation, let's find a way of accusing people criminally through the commercial statute, right, rather than the criminal statute. Not through the criminal statutes in Title 39. No, let's not. That's just too complicated. Let's not do that. Let's not make it a crime in that way. Let's make these crimes in the traffic court, right? These transportation crimes. Let's make them under Title 55. And yeah, we know Title 55 only applies to commercial users of the road, but we'll convince everybody that law applies to them. And so now, since we've convinced everybody that they have to have a driver's license to go somewhere, they have to ask our permission to get on the road, to go to church. They have to ask our permission to vote, right? They have to ask our permission to go and get an abortion, which is your constitutional right in Tennessee, right? We can control them. We, the great state of Tennessee, believe that you cannot travel on the road. You cannot go anywhere. You are forbidden to go. We are, of course, following the theory of Judge Roger Taney in Dred Scott versus Sanford in the late 1850s, before the war. And he has a wonderful passage cited in administrative notice that we reject that by David Toulis. We reject that entirely. That says we cannot have the manumission of Negroes, as they were called back then, because they would be on the roads without permission and without warrant. They would be able to freely go wherever they want, and we simply cannot have that. We cannot have black people on the roads in Tennessee or in any other state in this country without permission from the master. And that's what the whole licensing scheme is all about. That we have, and because white people and Christian people have not cared for the weak, and they've not cared for the aliens and strangers in the land, and the orphan and the widow, because Christian people, specifically them, they themselves are entrapped in this system. And city court allows the trapping process to get them. You would think the most discerning people in the city of Chattanooga would be the Christians, right? Because they don't see the problem. They don't see the problem in terms of the weak first. They are themselves trapped. And city court makes it happen. So if you want to get rid of city court, you need to understand you're wanting to get rid of the most important mechanism that the police state has, the police surveillance and enforcement and privileged state, the state that wants everything to be a privilege and that rejects rights in principle, right? The state rejects rights in principle. Just look at how the state fights people in court. You look at my case back in the early 2000s, how the state just lied about things. Fighting me tooth and nail. He was a man without a social security number who wanted to have a driver's license renewed. I thought I had to have one to be on the road. So that was a legal mistake, but I did have a right to have it. And the state rewrote the law to account for all of my arguments, though I did not appeal an adverse decision in the Court of Appeals in Nashville. City court exists so that the state can manage the people. And if you're not offended by that, well, then I think you should happily go your way And tune in when you like to, and don't worry too much about me, David Toulis, your host here at 92.7, live on Facebook, live on YouTube at Nuke Radio. Don't worry too much about me. You're comfortable and maybe a little bit numb, but that's a good place for a lot of people to be. But if you, my listener, are not like that, then the question is, what can we do today to end some of these abuses? And I would say that the end of city court will be something, if it's not going to happen this year for budgetary reasons, maybe next year, but there needs to be, I would suggest, a call among the people, common people who understand this issue. Thanks to David Toulis here, and thanks to Nuganomics.com, the website for Man Who Matters. That makes me the blogger, the biggest fan, and I do thank you for just a minute of your time. We're going to hear about my attorney letter next, and a crusty old doctor, Curtis Kane. I want you to hear about him too. David Toulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The Dalton man who was hit by lightning has died. Egan Stanley was celebrating the 4th of July at the Dalton Golf and Country Club when he was hit by lightning. He leaves behind a wife and 2 sons. Busted. A traffic stop leads to a massive meth seizure as Dade County Deputy Haley Getty pulled over a car for a window tint violation and no